Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Can you all hear me okay? All right, we're going to be recording this, so I'm going to be using the microphone so that if you have any neighbors or friends that may want to see this presentation, we'll be downloading this, and so people can watch this online and through our website. So going to jump right in, start on time. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to join us and learn a little bit more about what we're doing here at the district. And one of the things that we're considering is a health and wellness measure or bond. So you have some material about that. There have been some news articles about that. And so we want to have a discussion with you tonight about that, share a little bit about, oops, we got, there it goes. Okay, we're back. A few people are signing in. So here's the agenda. What we're going to do is we're going to do a pretty quick presentation, be opportunities for any questions that you might have. And then we're going to break out into tables where you can learn specifics about different parts of the measure that we're thinking about. So we're going to do a quick presentation, update you on what's going on, then we'll talk about next steps and also have an opportunity for any questions. You have comment cards here, so feel free to fill those out. Basically, what we're doing tonight is we're getting input on a potential bond. The board is going to be considering that over the next couple of months. And one of the things they asked us to do was go out in the community, get some feedback. And so that's what we're doing. We're going to be presenting some of that information to them next week, and then they'll be considering that in June and July. So just real quick, reviewing Beach Cities Health District. I think most of you are familiar with our mission, which is to enhance community health through partnerships, programs, and services for people who live and work in Hermosa, Manhattan, and Redondo Beach. Vision is a healthy beach community. We have our health priorities, which you help us set every 3 years. We have 3 of those, and so those are based upon a survey that we do with you, and then the data that we get from Gallup and the county, and we use that data to come up with the health priorities, which are mental health and substance use, physical and brain health, and public health and safety. And so these are our health issues that we've evolved into at the health district. And so that's a little different than where we started, which was a need for a rural hospital. And so that's kind of a key point, and we'll talk about what that means for this campus and what it means moving forward. And you can see some photos. We have some of our youth here tonight helping us out. This is the Alcove group. You have some of the gardens happening here, some of our older adult services. So real quick on the history, most of you know the history. The voters for Manhattan, Hermosa, and Redondo came together in 1955 to form the district. The state gave us the ability to do that coming out of World War II when there was a need for more rural hospitals. So I know we've all sort of joked about that, but believe it or not, we were rural in 1955. This was a pig farm. Across the street was the dump, and down the road was the drive-in movie theater on Prospect. So we were rural in 1955. The hospital opened in 1960, operated as a hospital till 1984. At that time, it was us and Torrance. Providence had not started up yet. By the mid 80s, obviously booming with growth here, booming with Providence coming online, and was the district was having difficult with the demand for the hospital in light of the growth that was happening. They had started out as a rural hospital, and that was changing. So they had an outside company come in and run the hospital for about 14 years. They then left in 1998. And then at that point, the district made the decision to focus on preventative health and community health. We get our authority from the state. And another thing happening at the same time in 1998 was that the state changed the name of hospital districts to healthcare districts. So the state was recognizing that there was more to health than hospitals. They gave authority to these districts that were already created to focus on all aspects of health, not just hospitals. And so that was authority that was granted to us in the late 90s. And so for the last 25 years, we've been focusing on preventative health, community health. Obviously, a huge sort of turning point for us was in 2010 when we were selected as a Blue Zones project. We went through the Blue Zone certification process, became a certified Blue Zone in 2016, and that really shaped a lot of the attitude and ways and methods that we use to focus on preventative health. Blue Zones is essentially a collective impact model, which requires a backbone organization like the health district to bring everybody together around a health issue. And so we've used that with our youth, and substance use has been an issue that we have with the three big cities. And then we've also used that for the Alcove model, which is a youth mental health facility operating on the fourth floor of this building. We'll talk a little bit more about Alcove in a moment. Everybody always asks about the finances, so we want to talk about that early on. So for our revenue, our total revenue is about 15.1 million a year. We do receive a property tax on an annual basis. So as residents of one of the three beach cities, I live in Hermosa, our taxes do reflect a small amount for beach cities, and that generates about $4.8 million, which is 32% of our budget. We generate revenue from Adventureplex, the Center for Health and Fitness. The other larger revenue source for the district in the past has been property leases. You can see we bring in about 4.4 million gross from leasing out this building and other properties we own. And what's happened over time is that this expense has, where is it? The expense has grown here, this 3.1 million. So when you take the net of that, that's about 1.3 million. When I came here and started with the district almost 8 years ago, that net was 2 million. So what's happened over time is this revenue from our property leases has decreased. And so what we've done to offset that is we've gone after more grants. And so Alcove, drug-free communities from the federal government. So what we've done is we've shifted a lot of our revenue from dependence on these leases and revenue from this building as it ages down to these grants where we're generating more revenue there. And so what happens is these funds help us to provide preventative health and community health programs. And this is a fairly unique model. There are other districts in the state of California. There are about 70 healthcare districts. We have a pretty unique and balanced funding system that allows us to provide preventative health and community health and meet those health needs that we talked about as far as our health priorities. So real quick, as far as timeline and our work on this building and this campus. So what's happened is we've evolved with our programs, especially in the last 25 years. We had the Surgeon General coming here and visiting us as an example of a Blue Zones community. We have Alcove starting up. We're reducing childhood obesity in Redondo and our partnership with the school district. And then you come into this campus and there's a big disconnect, right? Because this campus hasn't evolved like we have as an organization. And so we started out in 2007 with the goal of, all right, let's talk about what does this campus want to look like? This is what it looked like in the day, right? With these old cars. It still looks like this today. And so we began the planning process. We did study circles, and what we heard in those study circles was we want it to be intergenerational programming. We don't want this just to be a place for older adults. We want it to be intergenerational. We heard that there needs to be a center of excellence to showcase some of these programs that we have, like Blue Zones or Alcove. The Center for Health and Fitness is one of the only certified medical fitness facilities in California. That's on the second floor. So again, we heard from the community, hey, we want to showcase those things. And then we also heard that we want there to be a place where people can gather and there can be a connection to the community. So we did open houses, lots of public outreach. And then in 2021, our board certified the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, for a plan for this campus that would really have this campus be a place where people could come to be well and have this campus really reflect who we are as a preventative health and leading community health organization. So what we've done is we've started to implement components of that plan. We did the bike path in Redondo, and we'll show you where that is on the map. You know, we obviously had hoped that that would be able to continue into Torrance and be a connection from Diamond all the way over to where All Cove is going to permanently be. Hopefully, Torrance will someday improve that piece, but we were able to do the piece in Redondo. We've been pursuing a public-private partnership. The district has had success with that. As many of you know, we're in partnership with Sunrise Assisted Living in Hermosa. That generates revenue for us and for our programs. And so we've been pursuing a public-private partnership for the assisted living and memory care piece of the project. That's the piece I think that maybe has the most concern from people around it. Is that something we should be doing? Is that something we should be involved with? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other piece is Alcove, and we've received a grant, and we'll get into Alcove in a moment. We've received some money for sort of the base level facility of Alcove, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means and what that means in the bond that we're looking at. Okay, so challenges that we're facing today as a district. Two of the bigger challenges that we're facing is this building, this deteriorating late 1950s building, the escalating maintenance costs, and then seismic and structural issues with this building. We have the reports, and so when we do, I see some of you shaking your head. When we do the breakouts here, we'll show you the reports, and you can see the work that we've done around that. We are not required to comply with seismic standards because it's no longer a hospital. But there is a risk here. We've done risk assessments, and we'll show you a little bit about that and talk about that. There are 110 souls on the fourth floor that live here full time. And as a health district, we're going to address the seismic issues associated with that, even though we're not required to. And so that's something that happy to talk about and share the reports when we break out into the tables. I'll be leading that if you'd like to learn more about the seismic. On the mental health side, as far as the challenge, 1 in 5 children ages 13 to 18 have or will have a serious mental health illness. 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14, and 75% begin by age 24. So that's really the focus of Alcove, which serves youth age 12 to 25 with the hope of catching those mental health issues early on. So again, this is some of the seismic issues that we have with the building. It's these narrow columns here that are the problem. This has not happened in this building, but this is what happens when these narrow columns break in a large earthquake. Again, we've done the assessment. We've looked at doing a complete seismic retrofit of this building, which would be $90 million, and you'd have a seismically retrofitted 1959 hospital that doesn't meet our health needs. And so we looked at this in the EIR process. We are not recommending seismically retrofitting this building, but rather taking this building down, addressing that risk by taking this building down, and then creating something in its place that will provide health programs and health benefit to the community in the form of the open space. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. On the youth mental health side, bringing that really to the beach cities, 10% of beach cities 11th graders reported seriously considering attempting suicide. So that's something that we're hearing from our youth, from the 2 high schools of Redondo and Manhattan. So that's something that is a crisis for us. We're seeing that at Alcove. Yeah, Jeff, I'll get to you in just a sec. We're seeing that at Alcove. We've been surprised by the level of acuity in Alcove, where we are doing a lot more suicide risk assessments than we anticipated, and we're seeing more early psychosis than we anticipated when we opened Home Cove. Jeff. So Ali can address that maybe when Ali does the Alt Cove update, but it is through the Healthy Kids Survey and it comes through the school district. And so it is self-reported, and so there are different theories about that. I happen to be of the mind that it's probably underreported, but because it is self-reported by the youth through the high schools. So Ali has done that work for a long time, so she can expand on that. Yeah. Yeah. Why don't we just bring Ali up right now and maybe you can talk about this.
Here. So the California Healthy Kids Survey is a statewide survey and really the best available tool to compare how we're doing here in the beach cities to other school districts across the state. And so when we look at this, the 1 in 10 that have seriously contemplated suicide, they also are required by state legislation to do a signs of suicide screening annually in our school districts. And what we're seeing walk in the door at All Cove is pretty consistent to this data. As Tom mentioned, we are seeing more young people who are coming in with active suicidal ideation. They all complete a welcome packet and assessment as they walk in the door. And then I think to answer your question around mental illness, I think that is after they've received a diagnosis. So that would mean going to a doctor, a therapist, a psychiatrist to actually receive that mental health diagnosis. So with All Cove, and the reason why that age range is 12 to 25, a team looked at these types of youth drop-in centers that exist across the world to identify that 12 to 25 age range would really provide more of a continuum for young people. Most typically, you have a school-based service where maybe they're able to access services through the school, and then as soon as they graduate, that's going to drop off, and they're going to have to seek services in the adult health space. And so, by providing that continuum, you can help really start to address across that whole age range so there's not that gap in care for young people. And so what we've seen upstairs, and we're on the 4th floor of this building, if you haven't had a chance to visit us, we do community tours. Most Saturdays, we won't be doing that this Saturday because we have 100 youth leaders from across the South Bay that'll be gathering at All Cove to talk about shared priorities. But you are able to come up there and check out the space at All Cove. So to date, we've had, and this is a rendering of what's planned, and you can see more on these boards, and I'll be at one of the tables talking about All Cove and answering any questions that you might have about the project, about the funding, and what's planned for the future. So really, the goal of All Cove is to make sure that it's fully designed by local youth. And so even at our conference this weekend, it's all going to be youth led. While we'll have some stakeholders in attendance, I think some people in this room, we're really excited for them to lead the way in telling us what they think the greatest health needs are for themselves and their peers. A typical day at All Cove is not really a typical day. It's a drop-in center so that at any time a young person could drop in, access services. Today, for instance, there's a lot going on upstairs. There's a social support group happening. There are individual clinical sessions happening with therapists or a psychiatric nurse practitioner. We also receive diversion young people from our school districts or local law enforcement that have maybe been cited for a low-level infraction. They're able to come to All Cove and get some supportive services to get them back on the right track, and then that is removed from their record, so they're not going down that path. And then also a lot of wellness activities are happening. And so there was a group of students that were actually working on a mental health presentation for their school, others that were meeting with a clinician to talk about some mental health supports that they might be able to bring to a community that they're a part of. So just a lot of opportunities to come in and gather and be in a safe space. So these are the 6 service streams that we offer. We kind of say life skills and wellness services are at the foundation of that. We try to infuse that in every aspect of All Cove Beach cities. Another thing that's different is really about how they interact in this space. When they come in for the first time and do that screening, they're greeted by someone closer to their own age. We call them peer specialists. They walk them through the facility, help them do the intake paperwork, and they can also do individual one-to-one sessions. So our peer specialists are able to provide support, even if it's ongoing social support or guiding them through maybe navigating care. They're able to do that with a peer specialist. We also support families. So we have a few really great partners in this space. South Bay Families Connected has worked a lot with our school districts. We have a family coach who's able to offer support to parents and families, even to talk to them about how they communicate with their young person, substance use prevention efforts, and then supported education and employment. And I think that's an area we have room to grow. We've got a lot of really great supports and services in the South Bay through SoCal Rock and the Workforce Investment Board and the adult schools. So really looking ahead to talk to these groups and collaborate even more as we work to create more workforce development opportunities for these young people. So you can see our current space. The Cove is kind of the centerpiece, the living room, the primary gathering space. That's something that we're really excited in the new project, and you'll see some of the renderings here. We got a lot of feedback from young people on what's working right now and what they'd like to see improved. One of the big areas is just the ability to gather with groups. So two elements that Tom had identified, if we move forward with the bond measure, is around enhancing the cafe space. We see that as another draw for young people to come in. If there's a coffee shop like environment within the space, could also be a workforce development opportunity where they could come learn a job skill and then be able to get employed in the greater South Bay area. To date, we've had about 7,000 drop-in visits by young people. About 700 of those have accessed free services. About 70%, if you look across the beach cities, although it is available to all of the South Bay, 70% have been from Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, and Torrance, with about 55% of those being from the beach cities. So the majority of the young people that we're seeing come in the door are from the three beach cities, as well as our neighbors from Torrance. The other aspects of the new project include the hub, which would be another large group meeting room where we might be able to do more supported education and employment, more family support. And so you can see some of the renderings and the handouts on your tables to learn more about some of those elements. Another big thing, and this is what we've heard from the young people accessing services in this space, is sustainability and the environment is really important to them. They're feeling the stress and the strain of eco-anxiety and climate change, and it's really impacting their mental health. And so with their feedback, we really want to incorporate as much sustainability in the design so it matches what we're trying to do, not only on the program side, but in the building that they're coming to access these services. So we're looking at the building enhancements, some LEED and WELL, and also Blue Zone certification for all Cove beach cities, and hope that this can be a template as the All Cove network grows across the state. So just really quickly, we did receive initial funding from the state to get All Cove up and running. We're also working with the network across the state. We're one of 3 locations that are currently open with plans for another 6 or 7 to come online in the next several years. So the state really has invested in these All Cove centers as young people are maybe transitioning through their lives. If they're graduating and going off to school or to get a job somewhere else in the state of California, they'd be able to recognize an All Cove center as a safe space for them to be able to access these services. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to talk a little bit about open space.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen. I oversee communications here, and a large part of my role with the district over the last few years with the campus is collecting community feedback. We've done a lot of things when it comes to our community working group, our strategic planning half days, our volunteers. I see a lot of faces in here who have participated in that process and the feedback. And so I'm going to share some of those results of how we got to the open space. And so if you're familiar with the Blue Zones project, a lot of it is about placemaking, changing the environment, changing it permanent so that it can be better for well-being and also better for the community. A place where you can really gather, and it's really centered around people and making that connection. That was one of the first things we heard from the community working group. They've been following the project for a long time. They were really the ones that said, put the open space in, and then we expanded it from there, taking it to a study circle and then our half day to get more specific. And so this is just an example of placemaking, that it could look like this instead of the parking lot we have today. And one really great local community example is the South Bay Parkland Conservancy. They've really done an excellent job of taking a piece of Alta Vista Park, really unused behind the parking spaces, and turning it into a community garden, a place where you can have education. Now it's really usable. That's what we talk about when we're talking about placemaking. And then what are the benefits? A lot of benefits for open space, moving naturally. If you've been part of our Walking Mawai groups, the Center for Health and Fitness, it's an opportunity to have a meeting space there. And what we heard over and over again is that we want it to be welcoming. We want it to be relaxing. We want it to be intergenerational, a place where people can really come and and participate in those healthy activities. The other thing we heard was that they want some type of social connection. And so these are some of the health benefits that you'll get from the open space. And then we have the opportunity to use some native plants, change the environment here so you're not seeing all asphalt and parking lot. And as we dive deeper into actually what's going to be in the open space, we want it to also reflect the programs and how can we utilize it best to help support the community in their health and wellness journey. So we looked at a demonstration garden and outdoor kitchen where our 300 parent docents can come help train. They go right into the Redondo Beach Unified School District in Hermosa Beach to deliver lessons in our schools. It can also be a place where the community can gather to learn different things as well. A labyrinth for relaxation, open space. If you've been involved in our programs, we do free fitness across the 3 cities. We'd still do that, but we'd have a home here to also do it as well. Walking trails, as we talked about, really having that connection to the community, and then intergenerational. So we looked at a splash pad so that has both youth and older adult components as well. The other type of programming things that could happen that we heard is that intimate space is important, and you'll see that in this video I'll play next, but also spaces to connect with large groups of people. So you could have both. And then also that it shouldn't be programmed all the time, that it should be programmed maybe 60%, so that a large area of the open space is available for your pleasure, whether it's meeting up with a friend, taking a walk, but that we also have opportunities to connect if you want to. And so I'm just going to orient everybody to the campus right here. So these 2 buildings are on a ground lease. The district has a long history of working with our campus. They have medical offices in those 2 buildings. The main campus, what we're talking about to be demolished, is the wing on this side, and then this building here, and as well as our central plant. The parking here would stay, and Alcove is on the corner of Burrell and Flagler. And so the open space would be here, and then some parking here. And so I'm going to show you a video of we did a couple years ago, but it's still pretty up to date of what we're looking for. So you come from the parking lot. This is where the entrance of the building would have been, but instead of seeing the hospital building, it's a nice open space with the idea again that we could do a workshop in this area, maybe a performance. And as you turn the corner, you'll see some of these larger spaces to gather, and then more intimate spaces as well. And so right here is that parking structure. If you've been to this part of our campus, that right now is planned to stay. Here's an example of a labyrinth, just a area where you can really relax. And then as you turn the corner, you'll see the concept for the community garden. And then all along here, areas where you can meet up and gather in small groups as is large. And this is the very east part of our campus where our Torrance neighbors are right here. And this is a little bit of an outdated rendering. So When we're talking about the connection to All Cove and the campus, right now it's a very large slope. What we like to do is this wouldn't be here. There would be a wellness walk down to All Cove so that our young people can access the open space so we could do programming out there. So this right here would not be here anymore. This will be open. There won't be a building right now. It's planned to not have a building right here. Originally, All Cove was going to go up on the campus, but now it's going to go on that corner. And so as you come around the corner, you'll see again spaces, a nice trail or path. And then up front here is that 520 building. And then you have the parking. And then coming around the corner, it's a little slow. We probably could speed it up a little bit, but as we come along around the corner, you'll see the open space. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to talk specifically about the bond.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, so we've talked about the specific components of the bond. What we're looking at is to address safety. That would be demolishing the old South Bay Hospital. Open space, as you just heard, again, we would be programming that for health programs and accomplishing our health priorities through that open space. We're fortunate living in California where we can do that most of the year. We would be expanding youth mental health services. We would really be working on this young people and sustainability at the forefront. That would be a component, as well as connecting that open space to All Cove would be things that would be in the bond. What we're looking at right now, and again, this is sort of the education and information fact finding. The board will need to decide if they're going to put it on the ballot, but what we're looking at is a $30 million bond. That would be $3 per 100,000 of assessed value. So that's not what our house is worth on Zillow. That's the assessed value that we're paying on our house. This number is lower than if you were just doing a $30 million bond in Hermosa or Redondo, right? Because we have the assessed value of all three cities. So you're spreading sort of that impact out across more people. So that's why it would be $3 per 100,000. If you have an assessed value of $1 million, that would be $30 a year for the improvements that we've been talking about today. Quick information about general obligation bond, what they can be used for: infrastructure projects, capital, demolition, parking, connections, like we've been talking about, cannot be used for salaries and benefits, operational or programming. So these funds, again, if this went forward, would have to go towards the infrastructure or the capital projects. Financial oversight, we are going to have a citizen oversight committee if we do go forward. Many of you, as I look around the room, are involved with our committees. That would be something that we would continue to be committed to with this. Obviously, there would be annual audits as well. So where we are as far as next steps, we are going to have one more of these next week. Then we're going to, or June 3rd rather, and then we're going to meet with our board in study session next week. There won't be any decisions made then. And then the board will consider this in June and July. And if they are going to put it on the ballot for November, that would need to happen by the end of July. So what our plan is now is to do some table breakouts where there will be specific discussions around the open space, around the seismic, around All Cove, and then general bond questions. And so if that shows up at your table and that's something you want to talk about, great. Or you can switch chairs and go to a table that maybe holds your interest a little more. Happy to answer questions at the tables or answer any questions that you might have as we're setting up. Yeah. So that's something that would happen in phase 2 potentially. That is in the plan. An aquatics facility is in phase 2, but that is not something that we're planning on at this point. What we're coming to you about is to see if there's interest in helping with the cost of the open space. Hearing no from some of you, but that is something that we have currently in our agreement with our P3 or our development partner, where they would cover the open space, they would cover the demolition. We are not able to move forward with that right now because of the market conditions. And so the question is that something that we would like to cover? If we do, it would not be gifting anything to the developer, as was erroneously talked about today in the op-ed piece. If we did go ahead with the bond and cover the open space and cover all cove and cover the seismic, then we would obviously go back to the developer and maybe there would be some development that would be something that people would want to see. So we're not going to just gift them that. And so that's completely erroneous. So just, but that's the sort of the trade-off where if when we started this years ago, we were thinking that some sort of P3 or public-private partnership would be the way to go. We're now looking at, all right, is there another option where perhaps the public could get behind a piece of it that might allow us to do less on the private development side? Because we've heard from people, hey, that's too much height, too much development on the assisted living. And so there would be some trade-offs with that potentially. Well, right now we currently have a ground lease and we're in due diligence with our partner, but we're not moving forward. If the bond issue did not go on the ballot or did not pass, then we would look to see if we could go forward with the private development and take this building down and move forward with that through the planning process. If the bond were to pass, then maybe there's a different or smaller project with the partner if the markets improve. If we cannot go forward with the private development piece, then we would have to come up with the money, and the bond didn't pass, then we would have to come up with the money to take this building down and see if there was a way to do the open space. That would likely result in less services because we'd have to cover that out of our existing budget. So the question is, can we come together and see, is there a piece that the community can get behind in return for other pieces being smaller? Is this something that we can work together? Again, we're looking at all options to see if there's a way to do this rather than just saying, nope, we're only going to do a public-private partnership. We're saying, all right, well, what do y'all think about a bond? And if the answer to that is no, then we're kind of back to the public-private partnership, or and if that's not feasible, then we would have to address this building by likely reducing services. That's just sort of the way the trade-offs work. Right. So the question, and Kevin's wanted me to repeat the question for the recording. So the question is, do the voters or does the public have the ability to vote on the partner for the private development piece? So I would say that the that the say of the community is really based upon their election of the board members of the Beach Cities Health District. And this is something that we've been working on for years. What we have right now is a plan. People are having strong reactions to a plan. We have not applied for anything as it relates to the assisted living. And what I'm telling you is that right now, in that plan, the developer is on the hook for the open space piece and the seismic piece. We're doing all cove separately. And if there was a willingness to cover that by the voters, then the plan that many people or some people don't like would be less. We're not going to just give them that benefit. And so, and we have the ability to get out of that agreement. We have an exit clause there. So again, we're trying to keep all of our options open and pursue what's best for the community by doing this outreach, by being open about what's happening. And again, we're working on phase 1 right now. Phase 2, with the development more in this area, that's not something we're pursuing right now. What we're trying to do is trying to perhaps move some of these uses into the 520 building. Maybe CHF can move in here. Maybe we could have some other older adult services here, and we'd have alcove over here. We'd have open space here. And then perhaps if the markets change, we would have some assisted living here at a level that people could be comfortable with. That's the game plan. Yeah, that Jeff, that's just not accurate. They haven't decided to build it. What they've approved is a plan that contemplates it here, subject to working it out with a partner. And right now the market, but the voters have been involved with that planning process. The voters have been part of that for 7 years as we've planned it, and then the voters ultimately elect the board members that made that decision. Seen what? But ultimately, the board makes the decisions about whether it was this lease here that was done in the 90s, made here. Again, they did it with input. We're doing it with input. But at the end of the day, deciding whether or not to enter into a public-private partnership here or at Sunrise, that is not something that typically we've done votes on. And so, and it's not absolutely determined that that's going to happen. That's something that we're still working on in the plan. I'm just trying to explain some of the trade-offs that if, when we did this deal that contemplated 217 units down from 420. So initially there were 420 units to now down to 217. That deal included open space and seismic. And so if we as voters, because I'm a voter in Hermosa, if we decide that we're going to cover that, then perhaps there could be less here, and it's certainly not something we're going to gift to them. That's just hyperbole. So with that, why don't we jump into the tables and people can learn more about whether it's open space or alcove or seismic or general bond issues, or you could bid us farewell. So we appreciate you coming tonight, and thank you.